Hello and welcome.
Welcome.
Good. So let's just see, there might be more joining us, but otherwise, welcome to this webinar on dialogue and purpose. Anybody here for the first time? We've run, who's here for the first time? Fantastic. Just out of curiosity, how did you find it? It's always interesting.
So random.
So
random.
Random, okay.
No, actually, Sarah, I think so. I worked with Damien, and somehow, so he's connected to you, yeah. And I was trained by him, and so LinkedIn just took us places and found me to this webinar.
Wonderful. Love that randomness. Welcome. Lovely to know we both know Damien. Yeah.
Awesome. And Rudy, you're here for the first time as well?
Yes,
yeah,
I am.
And how did you manage to find your way here?
I've just been following Sarah on LinkedIn. So.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Welcome. Welcome.
Good.
Standard Chartered Bank connections, that stuff.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Yeah. Lots for Standard Chartered Bank at one time.
Fantastic. And Andrew and Leanne, welcome to as well.
Yeah, you've been with us before. How are you today, Andrew?
I'm very well, thank you, Sarah. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, lovely to welcome back.
Thank you.
And to Leanne as well. Hi, Leanne. I don't know if you can have your camera. Oh, there you are. Hello, Leanne.
Transit, but I'm glad to be here. The same link worked, but thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Are you in Malta? Are you?
Yeah, just in between meetings, but I believe in kind of sitting down, getting a notepad out and kind of engaging. So I'm 2 minutes away from being able to properly engage. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Fantastic. Good. And Chris, welcome too as well. I see you just joined. And Mobile might join, but let's just make a start. So yes. So welcome. Sarah and I are doing these webinars, and we are both very passionate about dialogue in organizations. We do a lot of that. We do open courses, and sometimes we go to out and work in organizations, facilitating dialogue where it is most needed. And we do this webinar series where we, instead of talking about dialogue in the abstract, then we talk about dialogue in relationship to some of the things that dialogue really can help out a lot with. So this Monday, it's about dialogue and purpose. And this is, of course, one of Sarah's specialities, with having written a book on purpose as well. And so, but I'm just gonna start by setting the scene a little bit, and then I'm gonna hand over to Sarah. And one of the things when we talk about organizational purpose, then of course, I think most of us have this understanding that purpose is very important. So it can do a lot of things. If you get a good formulation of an organizational purpose, or a purpose at the organizational level, or a team level, or even individual level, it has all these wonderful effects. It can be very energizing. It can create a sense of meaning and a sense of working for something bigger. It can help decision making if you are thinking about multiple options, but you have a purpose, then you will select whatever is necessary, or whatever matches the purpose. So it can help with the decision making in that way as well. It can give you a compass, and it can ensure ethics. It can help with ensuring ethics in your decision makings and in your directions. So it has all of these, and there's many other positive effects. So there are all of these positive effects of having a purpose, having a vision clearly formulated. And then I think the other thing that we know is that it's not always that easy. And I think everybody's seen those vision statements hanging on the wall, and if you ask anybody about them, they go like, yeah, I don't know, somebody had a workshop, this is what came out, doesn't really seem relevant to me. So some of the times the purpose might be formulated, but then it's ignored. And then of course it won't have all these wonderful effects. So when we look at the academic literature, then many scholars agree that a purpose can give a shared understanding, and that this is foundational for organizational culture, foundational for collaboration in the organization. Many, when they talk about the formulation of purpose, they say, well, leaders kind of formulate this shared meaning, including the organizational purpose. So there's a sense that the formulation of it comes from the leaders or the management, but that the source of it is kind of shared meaning. So they go out into the organization, they see what are the kind of meanings floating around out there, and then they give it this collected formulation, bringing out the important things, to bringing that to the surface. And then of course there's also a lot of academics who have looked into what are the things that needs to be done for a purpose statement to be accepted broadly and therefore being effective. So they ask questions like, do the employees need to agree with the purpose, and what happens if they don't, and such things. And on the surface of it, it looks fairly simple. So management, leadership go out, they have the finger on the pulse, they know what kind of meanings are floating around out there, and then they make these purpose statements that capture the essence of what we're doing in this organization and highlight that. But this way of thinking leaves a lot of questions unanswered. For example, if the purpose is formulated by the leader articulating meaning of the followers, then what is the input of the leader themselves in this whole process? If the leader is just articulating the meaning that is already there among followers, then are they even contributing anything? Another question that this line of inquiry leaves unquestioned is, many times the followers will give different and often conflicting meanings to what is going on in the organization. So what are we even doing here? One of my favorite examples is from a public sector organization where one manager said, we are implementing the decisions of the politicians, and another manager says, no, we are the expert. The politicians, at least in theory, should consult before they make any decisions. Very different meanings. So if you're a leader there, then how do you choose between conflicting purpose statements among the followers? And then of course there is the question of revolutionary visions or purpose. A revolutionary purpose, where would that come from? Something radical. And what will happen if followers cannot follow a revolutionary purpose? And what are the factors that decide whether a revolutionary purpose statement or vision statement is accepted or ignored by followers? So these are the kind of questions that show that this whole thing about formulating the purpose is a lot more complex. And of course what Sarah and I say is, this is because the formulation of purpose statement should be a dialogical process. It is something that happens through dialogue, through iterations of testing out things, through dialogue around if you have a purpose statement, then it has to be translated into what does that mean for every single individual in the organization? What does it mean at different levels, and so on. So yes, and we just had a chat before the webinar, and Sarah reminded me that my PhD supervisor, Donna Latkin, has this wonderful phrase in a book where she writes about, it's a book called Rethinking Leadership, which is a very good book. And there's a wonderful case about the Eden Project and how they formulated their vision. And she has this wonderful phrase. She says, the formulation of a vision is in very much a fusion of horizons. So it's a fusion of different perspectives that come out of people having different professional backgrounds, different agendas, different viewpoints, different perspectives, and they need to be fused. And this both captures what can be so magical about a dialogue leading to a shared understanding of an organization purpose. And also it reveals, of course, the challenge. And that being said, I will hand over to Sarah.
Great. Thank you, Klaus, for setting the scene there. And I think, as Klaus has said very well, that articulating a compelling organisational purpose statement sounds simple in a way, but it's not easy. And I'm going to very shortly share some slides with you. I know we're a small group, and Klaus and I like to keep these webinars quite informal, but I also really want to give you some content here. And I think that's going to be easier if I use some slides, and we're really happy to share the slide deck with you afterwards as well. But maybe I could just start with a simple starting point that I use in my work with teams or organisations wanting to articulate that purpose for themselves. And it's a question that says, you know, when have you felt proud to work for this organisation? You know, not proud as in puffed up or inflated, but proud as in, you know, your heart kind of glowed. It had a warm glow because of the positive impact of your work, your team's work, or your organisation had. And I think that's a really good starting point for a conversation about organisational purpose. And I recently worked with an organisation where we went on a real journey together to articulate that magical purpose statement, those 7 words or 9 words that will light up the whole ecosystem in an organisation. And the HR director said to me, "Oh, come and help us design and facilitate those dialogues, because you know, it's not easy, and we would have done it already ourselves if it had been easy." And so some of what I'm going to cover with you are some of the frameworks that I used with that organisation over the course of about a year. And very happy, if I just cut to the chase of that story, they did arrive at a compelling purpose statement, having run a whole series of engagement sessions that, as I said, had got some of these tools and frameworks in them. So if you bear with me, I'm going to share my screen. I am going to talk for, I don't know whether it's going to be 10, 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to come back into the Zoom room together like this. And Klaus and I would love to open this up and have a dialogue with you, hear your comments, questions, observations, wonderings sparked by any of this content. So if I come to the slide deck here, there we go. Hopefully you can see that there. And just to say then that the intention today is really to share some of these dialogue tools for getting uncovering an organisational purpose. In my own work, I cover team purpose, individual purpose as well, but here we're putting the emphasis at the organisational level. So just to give you a sense of what's coming up, I'll also cover some definitions. A model I find really helpful of different types of organisational purpose and a few watch outs if you're working with organisational purpose articulation, and then we'll also share some other questions that we use in very practical sessions, and then, as I said, a dialogue amongst all of us. And this is just really picking up on something I wrote about in my first book, so 10 years ago or so. A true conversation is a co-creation, and I think a compelling organisational purpose statement is also a co-creation. So for sure, you can outsource the articulation to a PR agency or a branding agency, but I think the most compelling version is going to be what comes through the people who actually work in the organisation, that co-creative approach. In my own work in Writing Powered by Purpose, I really drew on some academic thinking to come up with a clear definition of organisation. There we go. So, back to articulating, or you might be in the business of updating an organisational purpose statement. I was just thinking about Patagonia there. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Patagonia. They're often held up as an exemplar of a purpose-driven organisation. They recently re-articulated and updated their purpose statement. So there they are, creating outdoor clothing and equipment. Their purpose statement is, we're in business to save our home planet. So there you are, short, pithy, and it's that, as I was saying, meaningful and enduring reason to exist. So I will come back to the slides again. So here we go. Right, there. And I wanted to acknowledge just briefly the work of Victoria Hirth and her colleagues. They're based at the University of Cambridge at the Centre for Sustainable Leadership. And she would say, and this is one of the reasons why crafting an organisational purpose statement is complex, even if the output ends up being a simple statement of 7 or 8 words or so. Ideally, that statement, that reason to exist, and the words would align with long-term financial performance, so it would contribute to the organisation performing really well, whether that's financially or in terms of other metrics. It would also provide a clear context for daily decision making. So this is one of the creative tensions in purpose. You want it to be inspiring and aspirational, that purpose statement, but you also want it to be practical. So it makes it easier for people to say, yep, let's work on that project, let's work with that client, or indeed, no, we're not going to do that work. It's not ours to do. And so that's one of the tensions there. And I think also, ideally, your purpose statement, and I think Klaus has spoken to this, would unify and motivate relevant stakeholders. And of course, some of those would be people inside your organisation, the team members who work for the organisation, but also your clients. How does your purpose statement land with maybe your local community or your regulators, your owners, your shareholders. So ideally, it would create alignment across your ecosystem of stakeholders. And again, just with a nod to Victoria Hirth and colleagues, by meaningful, it's about creating, contributing to long-term well-being for people or the planet. And in a purpose statement like Patagonia's, you can join the dots quite easily between the statement and that positive impact. So that's the inspiration I use from the academic literature. And empowered by purpose, this is how I defined what it means to be guided by purpose. So you've got a clear, compelling and authentic purpose. The organisation is actually living that purpose. The purpose contributes to long-term well-being, guides day-to-day decision-making, and ultimately engages and energises people to do great work together. And therefore, back to dialogue. If that's what you're aiming to do with your purpose statement, then get people involved in the dialogue about it. So I've also used this particular tool in some of the dialogues I've facilitated around purpose. And this is a tool I created with a colleague, Ed Rowland. And it's saying that you could look at purpose through 4 different dimensions. And you can see at the bottom of this diamond, you've got the founding purpose. So that's the reason the organisation was created in the first place. Most organisations are not created just to make money. The founders normally have got some idea of a product or service they really want to bring into being. And some organisations such as Unilever, but also TSB Bank and Boots Opticians here in the UK have dug into their founding story to look at the DNA of the organisation as a way of getting some inspiration for an articulation or a re-articulation of purpose. And you can see right in the centre of the diamond there are the beneficiaries of the organisation, who the organisation is there to serve. So in dialogue work, we're absolutely keeping beneficiaries front and centre as we're looking to uncover the purpose. On the horizontal axis, as you can see, there's 2 other dimensions of purpose. And this, Ed and I were inspired by the work of Chris Argyris in the States, where he talks about the espoused values and the values in action, what's actually lived by the organisation. So here, as you can see, you've got the espoused purpose of the organisation, those fine words that are written on the website or put on posters on the wall, and then the actual lived purpose of the organisation, what it's actually about, regardless of what it's saying it's doing. And when I come across cynicism around purpose or accusations of purpose wash, a bit like greenwash, but applied to purpose, my read of that is often because you've got a disconnect between the lived purpose and the espoused purpose. And rightly so, I think, it's understandable you then get skeptics and cynics, but it's back to emphasising the importance of getting an authentic purpose for the organisation. And then finally, at the top of the diamond here, you can see Ed and I called it the true purpose of an organisation, or the most compelling or most potent purpose of an organisation, which is picking up on future possibilities, the best version of the organisation, sometimes called the organisation's North Star. And so just to give you a quick example of an organisation that I think went on a journey of evolving their founding purpose into that North Star purpose would be Unilever. So when Paul Polman became the CEO there for his what ended up being a 10-year tenure, he took his exec team for their first offsite to Liverpool, just outside Liverpool, to Port Sunlight for the offsite, because that is where, in Victorian times, the Lever brothers got started. And the Lever brothers, William Lever, wanted to create a soap for the masses. And this is the founding story of what is now Unilever. The population was at risk of cholera. Soap was a sort of luxury item. And so it was founded with the purpose of making hygiene commonplace through a readily available soap. And then what Unilever did was, in their purpose articulation work, look at that story, engage their stakeholders, and their articulation of their purpose nowadays, North Star, is to make sustainable living commonplace. So you can see how they've evolved their DNA, their founding story, to meet the changing needs of our world. There's lots more I could say on that organisational purpose diamond, but just want to give you a sense of how that tool can, in my experience, give you a really rich conversation about organisational purpose. It might be challenging, especially if you've got that disconnect on the horizontal axis, but that's one tool I've used many times on the pitch to get an organisational purpose. Then I'm just going to cover one other framework here as well, and this is the work of Jonathan Knowles and colleagues. And they published this article in Harvard Business Review saying 3 types of purpose. One is to do with competence, so the function that the organisation serves. The culture, we might have a purpose statement about the organisation and the way that we do things, the way that we work. And then finally, and I think this is the most common understanding around organisational purpose, which is to do with the cause. So sometimes known as social purpose or the social good to which we aspire. And if you look in the literature, you can find examples of each of these types of purpose statement. So with Mercedes, their purpose statement, first move the world, really picking up on what the organisation does. Culture, Zappos, purpose statement, to live and deliver wow, or Mars's purpose statement. And then, as you can see here under cause, a number of examples there. And I think the thing to understand around all this is that there can, if you're not clear about which type of purpose you're aiming for, it can create problems. So WeWork, you might have followed the story of WeWork, who were basically renting office space across the world, but had this rather grandiose purpose statement about elevating the world's consciousness, inspiring in some ways, and maybe going for that cause, that social cause. And yet I wonder whether WeWork might have done better to have a purpose statement more in the sort of competence or even the culture category. I think it really helps to have a purpose statement that is the right size, if I can put it like that. So it's inspiring, but without being inflated. There's a couple of tobacco companies on here as well that you can see, whose purpose statements, Philip Morris International, to unsmoke the world, create a better future, met with a lot of criticism when they came out, and I think Jonathan Knowles and colleagues writes about the risks of a purpose statement that doesn't emerge through a dialogical process, that emerges more through working with a branding agency, a PR agency, or the marketing team. So there were criticisms there. I'm also just going to acknowledge briefly that also tech companies, such as Facebook, have been criticised for their purpose statements, where people have looked at that and then looked at all the Facebook ad revenue generation and said, really, is the purpose about building community, bringing the world closer together, really? And so if I just come on to their conclusions, they would say, Knowles and the fellow authors would say, don't rally around a cause unless you've actually got one. Some organisations do, like Patagonia, but really important that you're not just saying the easy words, but following through on actions as well. Sometimes having a strong culture or a great product or service is often all you need. So Mars comes to mind there. Southwest Airlines, many case studies written about Southwest Airlines and how they've been a profitable business for the 40 years they've been around, where competitors have gone out of business. Very clear purpose statement in the case of Southwest Airline, all about connecting people with what's important in their lives through friendly, reliable, low-cost travel. And I think I've already made this point, don't delegate purpose to the marketing team alone. It can land you a statement that might then get heavily criticised. Another success story to give a comparison would be, and this is one of the Unilever brands, Dove's campaign for Real Beauty, is a good contrast for when they've actually had a much more engaging dialogic process to arrive at the purpose statement. So I think that just that three category framework can be really helpful to, so you're clear about what type of purpose you're aiming for your organisation. And each one has got an upside to it and can serve the organisation and its stakeholders and beneficiaries really well. And not everything has to take the form of a social cause. So just to round up here then, and then as I say, we want to come back to you and love to hear your questions and comments. So some of the questions that we've used in our work around purpose is, as you can see here with number 1, is to get people to think through what the benefits of a purpose-led approach would be. And I know Klaus earlier in the session spoke about the potential benefits. I think it's really good to get a clear fix on those, because becoming more purpose-driven is an ambitious journey to go on. And so really good to be clear about the benefits and the potential downsides as well. You might also, alongside that, look at the risks to your organisation of not being powered by purpose. So one of the things we know about younger workers, Gen Z, that are increasingly coming into organisations, is that they want, or at least some of them want, more meaningful work. They don't just want to line the pockets of the shareholders. And so maybe there's a risk you're not going to attract or retain the best talent if you don't have some purpose lens on your organisation. And just third, what are the main challenges you face in shifting to be more purpose-led? Paul Polman came out in his book, Net Positive, my goodness. net positive. It is net positive. And with his co-author, he wrote about some of the rude awakenings along the way that they had at Unilever with some of their brands in that move to become more purpose-led. So there are challenges. There might be stakeholders, and again, Klaus spoke to this, with different views about what the purpose is. And again, dialogue could really help you navigate your way through those differing views to get to a place of alignment. So I'm going to stop the share there and just open this up really for questions, comments.
We have come to the end. So
yes.
Maybe there's all that's left to say is we are doing an open course on dialogue in October 16th and 17th. And if you're interested, you are very welcome to sign up for that. The information is on Bridgework Consulting homepage. And you'll get the links also. We'll send out a link tomorrow. A mail tomorrow, also with a little bit of the recordings from this webinar, so you can rewatch certain things of the presentations. And of course, if anybody says, hey, actually we are, it can be around purpose, it can be around different departments who have a little bit of a communication issue or something like that, then you're always welcome to connect with Sarah and I, and just for an informal chat about whether we might be able to help you out with some of the challenges that dialogue can help out with. So do you have something to add before we?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and maybe we'll see you in October or another webinar. Thank you for coming, and all the very best to you.